Flow into gratitude as you watch, because one of the most expensive mistakes a human being can make is to spend an entire lifetime fighting symptoms while protecting the cause, and this single mistake appears everywhere, from personal habits to financial markets, from business failures to broken institutions, from leadership crises to criminal behavior, from declining companies to collapsing empire. And the reason is simple: most people attack consequences while leaving causes untouched, because consequences are visible while causes are uncomfortable, and the driving force behind extraordinary transformation has always been the same: uproot the root of the problem, because every system eventually becomes a mirror of what it tolerates, and whatever is tolerated compounds, whether it is excellence or mediocrity, discipline or chaos, truth or self-deception. And science understands this deeply, because science does not negotiate with symptoms, it searches relentlessly for underlying mechanisms. Psychology understands this, because a recurring emotional pattern is rarely the problem itself, but the expression of a deeper belief operating beneath awareness. Entrepreneurship understands this, because successful founders do not merely build products, they identify friction hidden beneath behavior and remove it. Leadership understands this, because great leaders do not spend their lives reacting to fires, they eliminate the conditions that keep creating them. And markets understand this, because price movements are often the visible consequence of invisible forces already in motion long before the crowd notices them. And this is where most people lose, because they become addicted to treating appearances while ignoring foundations. They want confidence without competence, wealth without value, health without habits, discipline without standards, order without enforcement, growth without sacrifice. And the brutal reality is that nature does not reward appearances, it rewards alignment with underlying principles, because reality has a form of accounting that cannot be manipulated for long, and every unresolved root eventually sends new symptoms to collect its debt. And this is why a trader who refuses to eliminate emotional decision making eventually pays for it, a business that tolerates inefficiency eventually pays for it, a leader who tolerates dishonesty eventually pays for it, a society that tolerates corruption eventually pays for it, and an individual who tolerates self-deception eventually pays for it, because the cost of ignoring causes compounds quietly while the illusion of avoiding them feels temporarily comfortable. And perhaps the greatest misconception of modern thinking is the belief that kindness requires softness, when in many situations genuine responsibility requires the exact opposite, because when a destructive root is identified, hesitation becomes expensive and zero tolerance toward the cause becomes compassion toward the future, because every root removed prevents thousands of future consequences from ever appearing. And this principle scales across every domain of life. A surgeon removes disease at the source, an engineer removes structural weakness at the source, an entrepreneur removes customer pain at the source, a regulator removes systemic abuse at the source, a disciplined investor removes emotional interference at the source, and a wise individual removes self-sabotage at the source. And gratitude becomes essential in this process, because gratitude creates enough psychological stability to face uncomfortable truths without becoming defensive, because the ego wants excuses while growth demands diagnosis, and diagnosis always begins with a difficult question: what is the actual root here? Not the visible problem, not the emotional reaction, not the public narrative, but the deepest causal force generating all the downstream effects in the moment.